I rushed down the vampire-infested streets of Sangreal, my heart thrumming wildly. Most days, I'd take care to move more slowly, to not draw a predator's attention. But this week, my desire to soak away the pain shooting up my fingers and forearms made me act rashly, even if the relief wouldn't last long. Tomorrow night, Palais Immortiel would host a ball. That meant that the noble vampires of the court required new gowns, tunics, and jackets, and my master would happily accommodate them. As one of his best seamstresses, I'd been working double time for the past 3 weeks, and tomorrow would be the longest day of them all. Working day and night was bad enough, but the noble vampires didn't only require fashionable attire. No, they needed party food, too. Earlier the same day, I'd given 2 full cups of blood destined for the palace. Though I'd eaten a small lunch since then, I continued to feel the effects of the bloodletting, but at least that was all I had to do. I counted my blessings that I wasn't one of the mini-slaves forced to serve the ball's attendees in person. I swung a tight corner around a tavern to avoid a group of gossiping vampires hogging the street, only to nearly run into a particularly nasty-looking bloodsucker. He eyed my wings hungrily, making me tense as I sidestepped him and ran on. A few paces later, I glanced behind me and a shiver darted down my spine. The vampire continued to watch me, his eyes trained on me like I was a mouse and he the cat, but he wasn't pursuing. Clearly, he'd noticed my red collar. The symbol of my oppression sometimes also saved me from lower-ranking vampires attacking in the streets. Finally, I reached Bathhouse 9, one of many slave bathhouses in the city of Sangreal. Only the wealthiest masters spared the expense to send their slaves to number 9, and despite hating my general position in life, I counted myself lucky to get to use this bathhouse in particular. While the front of the bathhouse resembled a regular business, it wasn't one. Natural thermal pools nestled in a vast interconnected cave system awaited inside, making bathing here a more soothing experience than at the lower-end houses. I opened the front door, and immediately the steam and tang of minerals from the natural pools calmed me. I exhaled, relieved to have arrived without incident.
"Your master's name, girl?"
asked a red-haired human guard behind a long desk. All day long, he stood in a small business front attached to the mouth of the cave and deemed whether others were good enough to enter the caverns. A second bald man was present today, too, rifling through paperwork. I ignored the condescension in the human's tone when he'd called me girl. At 23 turns of the sun, I was a grown fey female, probably no more than 3 turns this human's junior. But he had to make himself feel bigger somehow, and the fight wasn't worth it. All I cared for was a bath. Lord Alderic Laurent. I waited for the first man to check the ledger, while the bald one peered up from his papers to look me over. His gaze lingered on my wings for many uncomfortable seconds, and a hard glimmer sparked in his beady eyes as he licked his dry lips. I recoiled. The humans given the job of regulating the bathhouses and other establishments used by blood slaves were a nasty sort. Because the House of Laurent gave them a uniform and a sliver of authority, they thought of themselves as better than the rest of the slaves, as if they weren't just another bag of flesh to be drained.
"Lord Laurent's account is in good standing," the first guard said. "What's your name?"
Neve.
"No number?"
He looked at another sheet, this one filled with slave names, to make sure I wasn't trying to sneak into the bathhouse more often than I was allowed. No. Slaves didn't have surnames, and even if we did, I wouldn't know mine. I had not been born to an enslaved fae, but instead had been found in the snow with my dead mother. If my mother had been a slave, though, it was likely that she'd be unable to recall many memories of her past, or of her family. Vampiric powers of compulsion often wiped much of a slave's past from their mind, though my best friend, Anna, could say otherwise. She'd been born a slave to a mother who managed to recall a little of her past, like the last name she used in the human realm, Anant. Not that Anna could use her ancestral surname. According to our master's ledger, she was Anna 101. Still, knowing a little about her family gave my friend some comfort. I wasn't so lucky, but at least I wasn't Neve 35.